Hi, Jen. There is a gargantuan amount of news to talk about today, and I want to dig into a couple of things. One of them is Trump's plans to mess with the 2026 midterm elections, which he is pretty much telegraphing and saying out loud for us, but we're also going to talk about what you can do about it. Second is Jeff Bezos just laid off a huge number of Washington Post reporters. What does that mean? What should you know about that? Also, the Bad Bunny is completely driving the Republican Party insane. We'll talk about that. My friend Ali Vitale is going to join us and talk about what's happening with the negotiations on Capitol Hill. And I have a little fun surprise for you at the end. Okay, so let's dive into elections and what Trump is up to. It's not exactly a secret. The guy has been obsessed with both proving somehow, and there's no really proof to be had, that he won the 2020 elections. Obsessed. And it's not just that he has a fragile ego, which he clearly does. It's also that he wants to use it as a justification for messing with the 2026 midterm elections. So, and he's been talking about this nonstop. I mean, he talked about it last week. On Friday also, you had Tulsi Gabbard, who went and kind of led or was there lurking behind a weird corner while the FBI was seizing the ballots from 2020 as director of national intelligence. That's bizarre. She should have no involvement in that. He also called into the members of the FBI people, folks who were there doing the raid. That's also strange. Then you had fast forward, and Wednesday, Trump said, just yesterday, Trump said that he was not going to necessarily respect the outcome of the midterm elections. Again, telling us what he's going to do. Then, at the National Prayer Breakfast that happened this morning on Thursday morning, I got to play this for you because the prayer breakfast is usually a solemn moment. It's usually a moment where, I don't know, people talk about coming together, things like that. Of course, that's not for him. I just want to play that for you, and we'll talk about it when we're done with it.
They rigged the second election. I had to win it. I needed it for my own ego. I would have had a bad ego for the rest of my life. Now I really have a big ego, though. Beating these lunatics was incredible, right? The first time, they said I didn't win the popular vote. I did.
I mean, you probably could hear it, but here is part of what he just said. I had to win it. I needed it for my own ego. I guess the man is admitting he has a fragile little baby ego, so that is maybe a moment of truth and honesty. But the thing is he is not just telling us what he's doing out loud. He's also sending kind of an evil bat signal out to all of his followers who are waiting for instructions from Daddy sitting in the White House on what they should do. And there's a couple people that are especially alarming when you hear them talk about it. Okay, one of them is Steve Bannon. He's important because he is actually still, even though he's been in jail, he's been kicked out of the White House, he has many ups and downs. He is still a big advisor to Trump on the outside. He still has a huge listenership. And here's what he had to say about all of this and about messing with the midterm elections.
You're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen.
First of all, toys out of the pram. I don't know if he's existing in Elizabethan London, but toys out of the pram is sort of some tell maybe that he's not exactly in touch with average Americans. That aside, Steve Bannon is basically saying ICE, who is terrorizing Minneapolis right now and has terrorized LA and Chicago, is going to be on the streets, right? And that is a warning sign. Now, there are some interesting things that are happening out in states that I would just raise in a piece of good news. And some of these Democratic governors and other Democratic officials are taking steps to kind of limit cooperation with ICE. So even the governor of Virginia, she's only been in office for a month, Abigail Spanberger, basically just announced that she's going to end cooperation between local law enforcement, the state, and ICE. And there are a number of other states who are doing that. And that's important for a range of reasons, including not terrorizing people in the communities. But it's also important because it makes it harder for them to be in the streets interrupting the elections or trying to scare people like Steve Bannon just referenced. Okay, the other person is, of course, Little Mike Johnson. Now, Little Mike Johnson the other day was asked about Trump's comments, and he's had many of them. Trump said many of them. And Little Mike Johnson basically dove headfirst into the conspiracy theorizing, which should not be a surprise because he's an OG, an original conspiracy theorist. He was one of the people who was helping Trump in 2020 before he became speaker. But I just want to play what he had to say too, because this should also be a warning sign, because he actually has some power. He's second in line to the presidency, and he's Speaker of the House.
What you're hearing from the president is his frustration about the lack of some of the blue states, frankly, of enforcing these things and making sure that they are free and fair elections. We had 3 House Republican candidates who were ahead on election day in the last election cycle. And every time a new tranche of ballots came in, they just magically whittled away until their leads were lost. It looks on its face to be fraudulent. Can I prove that? No, because it happened so far upstream.
I mean, straw man looks to be fraudulent. Not sure I can prove it. There you go, profile and courage there for little Mike Johnson. I love the woman who's just like standing in the back, just like nothing's happening aside from him adding to conspiracy theories. That aside, this is important because he could actually help Trump and he could try to legitimize it. Trump does not have power. No president has power over state elections. States have power over them, though Congress could actually have an impact here. If Mike Johnson tried to lead members of Congress in putting in place more restrictive voting measures, of which many have been proposed. We will see, but that is a space to watch. Now, why are they doing this? Because they can't win otherwise. And the polling is so consistent here. And I just want to give a couple of examples here. So it's mostly in the 30s. In a Quinnipiac poll, 37% of voters approved of Trump, 56% disapproved. In a Pew poll, 37% approved, 61% disapproved. And Pew poll was also in the 20s when it came to support for his policies. My point is, people do not like Trump. That's a third of the public, or less than a third of the public, and they do not like his policies either. So they don't have an agenda to run on. Now, what can you do about it? Because I know this is making people feel really powerless and scared. And people should be eyes wide open, so I want to talk about it, and I think probably most of you are. But there are things you can do as an individual. You can volunteer for a campaign or an organization. You can become a poll worker. There's a shortage of them. You can become a poll observer, which may be a bigger commitment, but is something you can certainly do and help make sure the rules are actually being enforced and people aren't scared away from the polls. You can become a spreader of good information. Go to your the state websites, reliable information for state elections, and share that information with your neighbors. You can show up at town halls, you can show up at town council meetings. I share all this because it is scary, but you are not powerless, and there are things that everybody can do, and we're going to keep talking about all of these pieces so that everybody's tracking what exactly Trump and his bad, evil bat signal is up to and what his followers are doing about it. Okay. Speaking of threats to democracy, because it's important to talk about all of them, Jeff Bezos, yes, the founder of Amazon, yes, and Blue Origin, and now has become a Trump buddy who seems very eager to please him. Well, he owns the Washington Post. He bought it for $250 million not that long ago, over a decade ago. And yes, just yesterday, he fired a third of the staff there, 300 journalists. And the journalists cover everything from the Metro desk. You know what desk the Metro desk is? Woodward and Bernstein were from the Metro desk. So he fired the Metro desk, a bunch of people from the Metro desk. He also fired a bunch of foreign correspondents. He fired the bureau chief from Cairo. There don't seem to be many people left covering news in the Middle East, where there's a lot going on. The woman who is the correspondent for the Washington Post in Ukraine was literally in sub-zero temperatures in a war zone and learned she was fired. He fired the whole sports desk, which I can't even explain what that's about, but that also is gone. And it's crazy because this seems to be his desire to satisfy Trump's efforts to make sure that he is the only one sharing information with the public. And if you don't have reporters and you don't have journalists, then you don't have checks on what I just talked about, which is all of these efforts to mess with the 2026 elections and perhaps elections beyond that. And what is so crazy about this all is the amount of money Jeff Bezos has, because they keep even the statement from the Washington Post seemed to suggest, like we're all dumb or something, that this was a business decision. Jeff Bezos has so much money, and I'm just going to read a couple things. Peter Baker is a very well-respected journalist. He spent time at nearly every newspaper, including the Washington Post at one point, I believe, and he's been at the New York Times for a long time. And he posted a couple. This is his tweet. Jeff Bezos' wealth in 2024 was 194 billion. His wealth in 2025 was 215 billion. His wealth today is 249 billion. Point is, he's got a whole lot of money. It's a net increase of $55 billion. What is the cost of Bezos' 417-foot super yacht? $500 million. What did he purchase the Washington Post for? $250 million. What did he pay for the Melania documentary, which has some insanely low rating on Rotten Tomatoes? Well, he paid $75 million for that. So here's the thing. This is not a business decision. This is about pleasing Trump. And for a newspaper that the motto was democracy dies in darkness, this is the guy who owns the newspaper who is essentially darkening it. And this is a train of things that has happened. Think about CBS and think about and Barry Weiss and what that has done to 60 Minutes and so many of the shows there. Think about ABC and Jimmy Kimmel, the firing of Stephen Colbert. This is a train of things. So what can you do here? Here's what I would suggest. Do not cancel your Washington Post subscription if you like the Washington Post. There are great reporters and journalists there. But find and support other media that is giving you honest information as well. There's lots of information out there, lots of sources. Substack has a lot of great sources out there. Consume it, share it with your neighbors. But there are still a lot of good journalists at the Washington Post. Let's certainly hope that continues. There is a very fun story, if you haven't followed, I'm just going to get you up to speed on. And that is how much Bad Bunny is driving the Republican Party, or many people in it, I should say, completely insane. Now, it all started when Bad Bunny was announced as the halftime performer for the Super Bowl. And when that happened, Mike Johnson was asked about Bad Bunny being chosen or being announced. And his response was basically, I don't think it's a very good choice. Not a lot of people watch him or view him or listen to him, which is insane and totally inaccurate. And instead, he suggested Lee Greenwood as the option. Lee Greenwood, who has had a time as a performer, but is, I think, in his 80s, God bless him. And that was Mike Johnson's suggestion. Now, why is Bad Bunny driving the Republican Party, or many of them, completely insane? Well, he's driving them insane because, one, most of his music is in Spanish, which is apparently completely offensive for some reason to a lot of people in the Republican Party. The second reason is he decided not to do big stadium events in sort of the continental mainland United States, and instead decided to basically do a residency in Puerto Rico. And that was for a range of reasons, to honor the people of Puerto Rico, but also because, and this is a big one, he didn't want to give ICE the ability to show up at these stadium tours and arrest people. And that, of course, is driving them insane. Well, he just won a Grammy, and he got up at the Grammys, and here's what he had to say.
Before I say thanks to God, I'm gonna say eyes out.
Okay, so if they weren't already feeling crazed, they felt more crazed. And here's my favorite detail. Tommy Tuberville, who is not exactly an earth-shattering genius barn burner of a senator, and the only thing he's really known for is that he is a former college football coach, okay? He went to the Super Bowl last year with Trump. Football obviously is a love and a passion of his. He has decided, he's come out there and basically said, I'm not going to be watching the halftime show for the Super Bowl. I am going to not observe this. Here's what he had to say, which I think is quite telling.
Unfortunately, we've got, I call it the woke bowl, because we're getting more and more woke, and we got Bad Bunny or Bad Rabbit at halftime. I'll be watching the TPUSA halftime show,
Yeah,
but it's
we're gonna love that.
just unfortunate we've gotten to this point.
I mean, unfortunate that there is a Grammy-winning superstar artist who's willing to perform at the Super Bowl in the United States of America, which bazillions of people will watch. That guy is a massive football fan, and he is, I guess maybe he'll be watching the Super Bowl, who knows, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be there like he was last year. Not that there's like a big chant asking for Tommy Tuberville to come to the Super Bowl, and he is not going to be watching the halftime show because, as he calls him, Bad Rabbit, which is just him being kind of dumb and kind of disconnected, is performing. So there is certainly that. Okay, there's another topic I wanted to get into, and I'm going to go get my friend Ali Vitale, but just to give you a sense of what it is, there are negotiations happening on Capitol Hill. The deadline is Friday, February 13th for these. And that is determining whether or not there's going to be an agreement on greater restrictions for ICE. I'm eager to see what she has to say because I want to know what's going on and what's realistic here. I talk to a lot of elected officials, but you don't always know. So just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I'm going to grab Ali. All right, we're getting a chair. Oh, thank you. Allie's visiting in my office. We're getting her a chair.
Hello.
Come on over. Okay.
Hey guys.
So,
What a treat and a
come
dream.
on over. I'm going to share this microphone with you. And also,
Let me take this mint out and put it in
Oh,
the
sure.
trash.
Go ahead. No one's judging here. We're in a no judgment free zone. Okay. Ali Vitale, it's so good to see you, my
Thrilled to be
neighbor.
here.
So, I was just giving a little bit of an update about how there's a February 13th deadline
Yeah.
for this short-term funding because everything is funded except for funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which funds ICE. They got a huge plus up in the big ugly bill, as I call it. And now the question is, are any restrictions put in place? There were a bunch of things Democrats put forward, and they kind of formalized it, I guess, today.
Yeah.
But in addition to getting up at some ungodly hour and hosting a 5 a.m. show, you were on the Hill all the time.
We're in it for the love of the game.
Loving the game. We're like ships passing in the night. Okay, so let me just start by asking you, there's been a lot of cold water throwing, it
Yeah.
feels like, out there by a number of leading Republicans on what's possible. But what needs to happen for people who are tuning into this and know there are negotiations between now and February 13th for there to be restrictions put in place?
First of all, auspicious date, a Friday the 13th for a funding deadline on this is like, sometimes it's just stranger than fiction,
Yes, that
but
is true.
welcome to this
I didn't
version
even
of
note that.
Congress. Oh yeah. But when I've been talking to people, right, on its face, this is a very common sense moment because the politics and the policy actually align, right? You're seeing a moment where Republicans on a signature issue that they used to win on actually have every incentive in the world to try to rein in ICE, which looks like a rogue agency at this point. Democrats, of course, very much there as well. And so, in theory, you should have people coming together saying, masks off, body cameras on,
Yeah.
uniform standard of conduct. Those are some of the things that are on the list.
Yeah, I mean, there's judicial warrant requirement, no
Yep,
masks.
that's
you
a
said.
sticky one.
Yeah, it's sticky. Okay, we'll come back to that. Require ID on officers, prohibit
Mm-hmm.
enforcement in schools, churches, prohibit race-based stops,
Yep.
use of force standards, states can investigate misbehavior, detention standards, body cameras, regulate uniforms. There, a number of these things are common sense, like they are
Yeah.
standard practice and for police.
local
For
PD.
local police. Of this list, when you look at, because you mentioned one of these was sticky. Like, what's
Yeah.
the stickiest, and what do you think is? I'm not going to hold you to this.
No.
But what has the
Unfortunately,
best?
I'm not negotiating
chance?
this deal.
No, you're not. What is the best? Like, where do you think there's the most?
You could
potential?
probably see overlap on putting a uniform standard of conduct across because of the fact that ICE is just operating in a way that local law enforcement
Yeah.
just don't have to. The mask thing is sticky because there are Republicans out there who say, well, this prevents them from being doxxed, and
Yeah.
the policy of deportation on its face, even when done correctly, is controversial. Okay, there are Democrats who say, I acknowledge that. We can find ways to work around it. It can be situational, whatever. But the thing it reminds me of before we go to the sticky thing is, I was talking to Rosa DeLauro, the top appropriator in the House, and she was like, 85% of the people in the country are united around the idea that we should have standards of conduct here. And I was like, it reminds me of the fact that 90% of people also wanted background checks.
Yeah.
Basic stuff that just doesn't get through Congress because there's no incentive structure between both parties to work in bipartisan fashion and fix problems.
Which
It's
is
wild.
which is probably not going to be solved in the
No.
next week.
No.
Even though these things now there was not universal support among Democrats for even
Yeah.
moving forward with this
Yeah.
and this potential to negotiate. Now, if you don't negotiate anything, you're not going to get anything. So there's also
Right.
that. But basically, it seems to me, but you tell me,
Yeah.
the Senate is the place where something, if there's going to be something, because in the Senate they
Yeah.
need 60 votes.
Yes. Also, the sticky stuff in the House is the sticky stuff in the
Yeah.
Senate. So when the Speaker comes out yesterday or 2 days ago in a press conference with me and other reporters and says, well, I'm not going to see a reason to amplify the warrant situation. We shouldn't be adding judicial warrants on top of the existing situation. That's him basically taking it off the table. And you've got Schumer and Jeffries leading the charge for Democrats saying, no, we need that on the table, right? Senator Britt on the Senate side, Republican Alabama leading the charge on these negotiations, reads the initial list that Democrats put out overnight and says, no, actually, this is a wish list. This is political. Of course it's political. And it's potentially why most Democrats I talk to actually believe we're going to have a shutdown of some kind on DHS, because 7 days, 6 days, however many days is just not enough. And they don't see that the alignment, which seems obvious, I think, to the American public that are like, well, why wouldn't we do some of this stuff? The political incentives, even though they should be there, don't seem like they're there.
The way to avoid a shutdown is if, in the House, they have enough Republican votes to vote and pass a continuation of funding without Democrats.
Sure.
In the Senate, they need Democrats.
Yep.
But in the Senate, it seems to me there are people to watch, including some of the people who voted to end the shutdown on healthcare, like Senator Shaheen, and some of the people who were in kind of that group of 8, right? Are those the people you're watching? And what do you think? Does it feel different than the healthcare situation, or it feels like those are the people that could come and vote to get to 60?
Yes and no. I do think that when we got into this posture, it was exactly the people who are always looking for bipartisan deals and hate shutdowns who said, I'm not going to continue funding DHS right now. You brought up the important part, which is like, no matter what they do on DHS funding, ICE is still funded in its own separate way. So let's say we do go into a shutdown. You end up that TSA is impacted, FEMA is impacted, but ICE itself still has the money that it needs to function because of the reconciliation, big, beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it. That's got the money for ICE already. So yeah, you can watch the people who always want to make deals. At the same time, some of the people who are deal makers, like Gary Peters, who's also retiring, is also the top Democrat on the Homeland Security Committee. And so they are integral in these discussions. And I think the issue set on healthcare leaned a little bit more towards the expertise of people like Shaheen, like Angus King, like Maggie Hassan. This issue set is a little bit more squarely in different Democrats' camps, and those Democrats are not necessarily the ones who are the quickest to negotiate, but also they don't feel like they should on this issue. Debbie Dingell on my show called it a moral moment for the country, and I think that's what makes it different.
Oh, it feels like it. And it's sort of like, if you're going to use leverage, this is the thing to use leverage on. And the big question is like, how do they use leverage in the best way when you're in the minority?
So few levers to pull.
Yeah, that's a reality. That's why elections matter. One of the many reasons. What are we missing, Ali Vitale, about this topic that people aren't talking about enough?
I think the way that Democrats actually, if Kristi Noem were to be fired, ousted, let go, and we've done reporting that like she's kind of been on the outs at various times. Like I did some reporting that we thought she could be out as soon as January 1st.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not like the favorite daughter of the cabinet.
Also,
right
believe
now.
me, when the government and spokespeople say they have confidence in the person, it doesn't mean they have their
I don't
job
think we even got a confidence statement.
That's the death knell. That's the death
The
knell.
confidence statement is bad.
We'll look out for that. We'll look out for the death knell.
No, but I think that's one dynamic, is that like the White House could buy themselves a lot of goodwill by just doing that.
Yeah.
But then the other piece is the way the White House is treating this moment differently. During the last shutdown, they were stonewalling Democrats, trolling Democrats, ignoring them. Now, I mean, Trump directly negotiated with Schumer. I have questions about why Jeffries was left out of that, and I think Jeffries aired that over the weekend. It's a much bigger can of worms than we should get into. But now it seems like if the White House sees the politics, and as Trump calls it, the bad PR, that's always his motivator, right? To do something. So maybe that's what makes this moment different. I don't know. We'll see when they actually start negotiating. Time's ticking.
Kristi Noem doesn't have a lot of love out there. But that aside, Ali Vitale, thank you for dropping by and for being awake. I know it's 2 a.m. for you. So thank you for being
I
here.
don't even know what time we're at right now.
Yay.
Always a treat.
I had one last fun thing to talk about, which is the gold Trump statue. Have you seen this? I'm just going to make you stay here for this. You don't have to say anything about it. Don Colossus.
Do I want to know?
I just got to show it there because it is really quite something to behold. And just in case you're wondering, and you can kind of see the man in the background, it's a 15-foot tall gilded statue of Trump being financed by some crypto bros. And it's supposed to be in Trump's golf course in Florida. So we will see. First of all, I don't know that that's an accurate depiction of Trump's body type, but that aside, the sculptor told the New York Times, I had him very lifelike. The crypto guy said I had to get rid of some of the turkey neck. I had to thin him down. So maybe he's saying
Cheaper than Botox, maybe?
I guess he's saying the thing out loud. And Trump texted one of the crypto bros, it looks fantastic. So there is that. No real update, because I think they're due some money when it's going to end up in Florida, but I'm just going to leave you with that.
At what cost?
All right. I held the alley hostage for the
I was
for the
happy
gold
to have
statue.
it, though I can't unsee it.